When we return, the guys welcome comedian John DeBellis to the studio. Keep it right here.
Hey, bro.
What are you doing here?
So Miriam's coming home.
Giddy up! I'm Redneck Jesus.
Hey, Mrs. Black.
Hey, get off it! Get off it!
Do you, ever just wish things could go back to the way they were?
All the time.
Big finish.
If it wasn't for Jack, Los Angeles would be a killing field by now. You're gonna talk to me now.
You think you'll be safe out there?
My own people working against me.
None of this was supposed to happen this way!
This morning on The Dan Patrick Show, weekdays on Audience.
Do you go to Laker games, Steve?
When I go, I really turn the place upside down.
Were you on the Kiss Cam?
I've never been on the Kiss Cam, unfortunately.
It's always weird when you're next to Will Ferrell.
He will make out with anyone. I've never seen a game with Will, but I venture to guess the two of us will be making out by the end.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.
Shetty, what are these chocolate-covered cherries? What's the deal?
Phyllis and Marie have been great. They've been hooking me up on a website, and I got a couple of hits already. I think it's going to be good.
On Facebook?
No, this is like
Oh, a dating website. That's right. A couple of girls that are
They
looking
didn't
at you?
finish the profile, and it's starting to hit a little bit. But
really?
Not my type stuff. I'm very picky. Oh, it was in my email.
But how do you know they're not your type?
I
Is it
just
a picture of them?
Yeah, not only look-wise, it's just age-wise and how far away they are.
How old are they?
They're older than me, but I don't want to be bothered with it. I want someone like
26 or 27.
that was born like around 1980. Well, I got to be a gentleman.
You're all right in the 80s, I think.
Wait, 1980 is 33. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's a perfect age for you.
Right?
I gotta think you could get. You're older. You're established. You've got a successful television show.
He's right, though. Shane,
gotta think.
you, Shane, and Josh gotta take me hunting for women.
No, yeah. You need some good wingmen. I want in on that trip too.
No, yeah.
Me, Josh, our cameraman.
No.
And Shane, our
No,
producer.
we will. You guys will.
All four of us, yeah.
You hook me up with some good women.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding?
Thank you,
These
guys.
Perfect, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
You found it. It's the all-new Artie Lang Show. Here's Artie Lang.
Hey, welcome back to the Artie Lang Show, and a treat for us tonight. Author, comedian, raconteur, all-around good man. John DeBellis is here. John wrote a book called Stand Up Guys, A Generation of Laughs. Here it is right here, and you can tell from the cover that it's from that glorious time, the 70s and 80s. The 70s really when modern stand-up comedy was born. When you had guys like, I'll just go off the cover here, the great Richard Lewis, one of my heroes, Larry David, Bill Maher, when Leno and Seinfeld got their star. Piscopo's on the cover here, and that's you, I assume, Johnny.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, that's what I had
Nice
here.
shot. Like a little Gabe Kaplan-y, a little Dennis Farini. But thanks for coming on. Here's John DeBellis.
Thank
What's
you.
up, buddy?
Thank you.
Explain. So now, where are you from, John?
Jersey.
You're from Jersey.
Jersey, yeah.
What town?
Well, Dumont, New Jersey.
Dumont, New Jersey.
yeah.
And how'd you start in stand-up and when?
Well, what happened is I always wanted to do stand-up.
Right.
As a kid, but I was frightened to death of it, so I went to art school.
A lot of people are. Yeah. I mean, I was too.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I went to acting school for a little, like 6 months, so I could afford to try to get over the fear of just being in front of people. You know. Yeah. So you went to art school.
Art school, yeah. And then I guess I realized that my horrible childhood would be more beneficial to stand-up than it would be.
It helps.
To the art, you know.
Well,
So-
you did something. It's got to inspire something, right?
Yes.
Now, what was horrible about it?
Do you want reality or?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do
no,
it. Yeah.
no, actually.
We got
well,
no audience here. We could creep into each other out. It doesn't matter.
Well, to begin with, I was actually an accident. I was the product of very sloppy oral sex. but you know.
That is very sloppy.
That is
oral
sloppy.
sex. Yeah. Okay, well, listen. Okay, it's something you got to get over.
I got to get over that, you know. Yeah.
And now, do you think it was an abusive place to grow up?
No, actually, no. It was kind of toxic.
Yeah,
It was kind of toxic. My father, one birthday, when I was a little kid, he bought me a swing set, you know.
Right.
And then he put it in front of a brick wall. Which,
that is really just bad.
Yeah,
That's bad placement.
Yeah, placement. Yeah, so,
the term "hitting the wall." You did it early. So now, at what point do you say to yourself, you get out of art school, and you're in New York City? Now, what year are we talking about?
We're talking 76.
Okay,
76. And what happened was really
this is booming stand-up. Catch a Rising Star, comic strip started that year, right? Yeah.
All those places started in I guess the first night. What happened is I went, I had a date, and she was, well, I'm trying to think. X-rays make her look fat, okay? You know, and
I understand.
You understand?
Right.
And anyway, I was fooling around. I had a few drinks, and the waitress said, you should go to audition. So I found out when the auditions at the improvisation.
At the Improv. Now, that's the first one, 9th and 44th in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, 44th and 9th. And I found out when the audition was, and then I went, didn't pass.
Right.
And then went to Catch a Rising Star, and I finally passed. But I'll tell you, not about me, about Larry David's story.
Yeah.
When he went to the Improv one night as a guest, and decided he wanted to be stand-up. And he literally went up to Bud Friedman and said he wanted to go on that night.
Right.
Imagine
Very
somebody
bold.
coming up to the audience.
Now, I mean, knowing him now, it sounds like something he would do, but people don't realize this. If it wasn't for, meeting Jerry Seinfeld, and look, Seinfeld benefited from that meeting just as much. Because knowing the sitcom world, I've tried this a couple times, hooking yourself up with the right writer is so hard.
And sticking with him.
Yeah,
and sticking with him.
Those guys helped each other immensely. But if that meeting didn't happen, Larry David was sort of not even a real successful stand-up and broke.
He was broke, and it was. Larry always bombed. That was it. Well, you probably know that.
Oh, of course, man.
The best one of the most fun things was actually waiting for Larry to bomb.
And a lot of comedians like comics like that.
Like that.
A lot of comics is considered a guy that maybe the audience doesn't really get, but comics admire the risks they take.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they risk bombing just to say stuff they honestly think's funny, and a lot of comics appreciate that. So he was a comics comic.
And he would, but when he bombed, he would just explode at the audience.
Right, got mad.
Explode. He would call them scum. He would challenge
Stupid.
He'd challenge them to fights. Bring them outside. He'd throw gum at them.
Yeah.
It was. And so we never knew what he was going to say. So we just sit in the back and laugh. And wait for him to start a fight, basically.
Well, but that actually led to, he actually got work. He wrote on Saturday Night Live for a while. So a lot of times producers, they'll notice that even though the guy's bombing, the jokes are good. So maybe he could be a writer and he's not a performer, right?
Yeah, well, he worked on Fridays.
Fridays was the answer to Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Friday.
And he wrote, he had a great character he did was think it was Sally Hemus, and you'd be temp Beetle. And one time he was temp feminist, you know.
Yeah, all this stuff was real, like, you know, you got to think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what was that world like now? 1976, I know the comic strip opened, and I think Catch a Rising Star did. That's a year after Saturday Night Live hit, and sort of the Woodstock generation finally had a presence in comedy.
Yeah, yeah.
So all you guys, now, was it as crazy as you hear?
It was like, you know, being a comic, you always feel a little different growing up than everybody else. And you finally go into this place, and you're surrounded by 30 or 40 people just as nuts as you
guys.
are.
It's like being in a crazy mental institution.
Yeah, exactly. It's like comics like a child without adult supervision, essentially.
Right, right.
You know?
Well, it's almost like every hot chick moves to L.A. Every stupid hot chick moves to L.A., and then you realize you're in a room full of stupid hot chicks. And comedy's like, okay, all these people with the crazy backgrounds like you're talking about,
on the
who are witty, funny, but kind of nuts, they all end up in the same room.
Yeah, and it was just, you know, that's why the reason I wrote the book was that, you know, you see books about stand-up and about time periods, and they're cold, they're unfeeling, and I wanted to write. I mean, it says it's a memoir, but it's not a memoir about me. I'm the through line.
It's a memoir of that time.
It's about the time and the guys and the laughs. We laughed all night long. I mean, you know.
Well, that's the other thing people don't realize. Like I think the best example of my generation of a club like Catch a Rising Star for my generation is the Comedy Cellar down here in Greenwich Village. I still play it all the time. And the setup is there's a table upstairs where all the comics sit to wait to go downstairs to perform. And because it literally is a cellar. And God, I used to love booking spots there because of the hanging out, not being on stage, the hanging out at that table and making each other laugh. The hardest I've ever laughed in my life is sitting around that table, you know. And you look forward to the night. You're going to work technically, but, you know, it's great.
The hardest you laugh is, you're right, is when you're with another comic. I don't know what it is. You got a bunch of comics together, you just laugh to the point where it's cathartic.
Now, who are some of the guys you liked hanging out with and your favorite guys to hang out with in that sense?
Well, when I started, I mean, the very first night I did stand-up, this is how different it was, and I'll get to that part.
Right.
Is I met Elaine Boozler, Larry David, David Say, remember David Say?
Yeah.
Belza.
Right.
And then I'm sitting there, and it was, you know, Elaine comes over and she talks to me, and I was nervous. It's Elaine Boozler.
Yeah.
And
so she was well known at this point.
Well, known amongst
she was a regular
in the comedy world. Yeah. And she came up to me and she said, "Oh, we heard about you. We heard about you from so and so, and Bob Shaw had said this and that." And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting with Larry, who I always thought was a little nuts. Even then, I loved him. He was my closest friend then. But he was,
I've met him real briefly, and he does give off like he's always like about to just scream at you or something. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And he loves explosions.
He gets annoyed.
Yeah, but he's funny when he gets annoyed.
But anyway, that's the difference. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, so Richard Lewis comes up to me and he says, "I heard all about you. Come on, I'm taking you to the Improv."
Right.
And he just took me over to the Improv, and he goes to Chris Albrecht. This guy's supposed to be funny. Put him on every night.
Chris Albrecht, who later on went to be the head of HBO. Right, yeah.
So I got right in with all the guys right in the very beginning. And so it was just one night after another, just laughs and craziness. And it doesn't stop. But a month ago, I was in California.
Right.
And Larry David calls me up. He says, "My brother Ken," and this is how close we all were. We all knew each other's families.
Yeah.
And he says, "My brother Ken just moved to San Diego. Let's drive down." So I go to Larry's house. Larry doesn't drive a fancy car. He drives a Honda, Toyota Prius.
Does he really drive a Toyota Prius?
Toyota Prius.
You're
couple
kidding
years old.
me.
Yep.
I mean, that's almost like he's doing that to be hostile. I mean, the guy, he's got $1 billion. Forget about the Seinfeld money. He's got Curb Your Enthusiasm. He hit the jackpot twice.
Laugh.
No, he hit the jackpot twice with sitcoms.
Well, he bought a
Prius. A Prius is almost like, look, I want you to mess with me. I want you to say something.
Did I tell you he bought a Porsche? He bought a Porsche.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He calls me up and says, "John, I'm going to buy a Porsche. I've been debating 6 months. I'm going to buy a Porsche." So he buys a Porsche. Great, Larry, buy the Porsche. And he calls me up 3 days later. I brought the Porsche back. I kept thinking people were walking around saying, who's that bald guy? I think he's a big shot driving around in a Porsche.
I mean, Brim, wouldn't you think about it? If you saw Larry David, knowing him, in a Prius, wouldn't you think this is the guy who wants me to say something to him? Like,
yeah, but it reminds me exactly the guy. That's exactly what I would want him to be, though, because that's what he is in Curb Your Enthusiasm. Correct?
I guess, but like, okay, I guess on the show, but the Prius. I mean, I hope you call him on that, John, and say, what are you doing? Get a Mercedes, get a comfortable 4-door Mercedes.
He doesn't care. He's an itch. He's a. So we drive down to his brother's. This is a kicker. This is now Larry. This is Larry.
Right.
We drive down there. We get into his brother's house. I walk in. Ken walks in. 6 feet into his house, Ken's giant dog attacks Larry. Bites him on the side.
See, that would annoy me.
Yeah, chases him. Falls into the bathroom. He's bleeding.
Oh, he's bleeding.
He's bleeding. He had to get shots. He had to get.
There you go. There's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's an episode.
There's an episode.
And he was upset most because the dog ruined his favorite shirt.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, the whole thing would annoy me. That's a kicker. All right, stick around with us. So we'll talk more about the book Stand Up Guys. We're here with the great John DeBellis. Join us on the Artie Lang Show.
They had a lead. I tried to get in on it, but they shut me out.
You're going back, aren't you? Afraid disappearing actor is my mother.
It won't be for long, I promise.
I should have seen it glow, but everybody knows that a broken heart is blind. That a broken heart is blind.
Jimmy, down! You don't find me the car? You don't find the gun?
This runs deep. You're getting in way over your head here. I and my organization have nothing to hide.
You give me what you get on Jimmy, and I'll turn a blind eye to whatever vigilante sideshow you're running here.
You're not all you pretend to be, are you, Jack?
If you think justice and vengeance is gonna help, then you are misguided and you are lost.
Any escalation of this is gonna be bad for business.
How long are you gonna keep waiting on Daddy's permission?
You get out there and fight her. You went off the reservation. When you're out.
I say we need fire with fire.
I will
handle this!
Should have seen it glow, but everybody knows that a broken heart is blind. That a broken heart is blind.
And then it's gonna flash 4 times to take 4 different pictures.
Okay, and I can just talk once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say whatever you want.
Okay. Tell me when.
Go. You can go now.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 20-something years since my last confession. I don't know. I don't believe in the Bible because I don't think that the lead character is believable. Can I say life's a gift, better left unopened. I have nothing of any value to give anybody, but I'm here talking, and I think I've hit the button.
Did it flash 4 times?
I think so.
Is think it did too.
Yeah.
All right, so now we just gotta wait for your pictures to come out.
Okay. I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about.
No!
I was just
The
talking.
confession is perfect. It's kind of like a confessional.
Well, it's because of the
Pope?
The Pope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
That was funny with what he was talking about with Mike Francesca. Tell him that.
Yeah. Do you want to see your pictures?
I get pictures of myself. Hey, worse than I think.
No.
Stay right there.
Oh, yeah.
That was very funny about Mike Francesca. Very, very funny.
You found it. It's the all-new Artie Lang Show. Here's Artie Lang.
So, John, real quick, just as we're coming out of commercial, you noticed that I have a lot of Thurman Munson memorabilia up, and you said you went on stage one night with the night he died or something?
What happened, we used to go on stage, myself, Piscopo, Bram von Hoffman, Bob Wall, and we would do a song called to O'Donna, O Thurman.
Oh, no
and it would
kidding.
be, oh, Thurman, and we'd do the stupid choreography.
Before he died?
Before he died, and you know, we'd all stand there doing the catcher's mask
No
stuff.
kidding, that's
and
right.
then I would slide in.
People forget how popular.
Well, I slide into home plate.
Yeah, okay.
So the night we did it, he died.
Wow.
And we got booed off the stage.
Did that took balls? Had you heard he died and you went?
We'd heard. We figured it would be.
And you went with it anyway.
We thought it would be like a tribute to him. And they
He
booed
was
us
a
off the stage.
popular guy, so
I
people
loved
misconstrued.
Thurman.
Yeah, Thurman was the best.
Yep.
So now, what was the drug scene like back then? Because by the time I got there, late '80s was when I started. My first time ever on stage doing stand-up comedy was July the 12th, 1987 at the Old Improv. I went to an open mic a Sunday night at 9th and 44th. Now, was there a lot of blow? Everything you heard back then, was it nuts?
Well, everything. Let's just say there were two groups of guys, okay?
Yeah.
I hung out with like the real nerdy kind of guys with
Now,
me,
who were
Gilbert, Larry.
Gilbert Godfrey.
Yeah, Larry David,
Was
Bobby
Seinfeld
Kelton.
in that?
No, Seinfeld was with more the comic strip guys.
Okay.
And then there were other guys, I don't want to say that, but other guys that were kind of cooler, like, well, I'll say Mar and those kind of guys.
They were like edgier.
Yeah, so they were more into that scene, you know?
Right.
And
What
so,
was Bill Maher like back then?
Mar was, from day one, he was funny and cocky. He was always cocky, but in a good way, in a very confident way.
Was he as political? Because I seem to remember his stuff not being
Not as political, but it got more and more political as it got.
I mean, he's as political as it gets now. It's nuts. Yeah.
But he always, from the day one, he had this great confidence.
Right.
That showed through. And I remember Kelly Rogers?
Yes.
Kelly said, you got to come see this guy. You got to audition. You got to come see him. And he walked in and saw him. I said, yeah. And if we pass him, and Kelly, I said, yeah.
Now
you got to pass him.
You did an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So
Just at the end, a small thing.
The Bill Buckner episode.
Yeah.
So now Larry called you up and said you remain good friends with him, I assume.
Yeah,
right?
what happened was, I actually called Larry. I said, Larry, you know, all these years, I never did anything on your show. I'm not an actor. I don't want to be an actor.
Yeah.
I just want to do something because we can hang out.
Be fun, right?
Yeah. So he called me up. He said, John, I got this thing. You want to come in and do it? And so I went in and...
That's nice.
And we hung out. And the whole time he was being apologetic because he'd gotten a house, a new house built, and he says, but it, you know, I got what I wanted. It's not a big house. I got a couple of bedrooms, and I always wanted a TV room. And he was like apologizing for buying a house.
Do you think that was sort of him being insecure about being around a comic you knew from the day? Was he apologizing for being successful almost, you think? Like, was he neurotic about? He created neurosis about that.
He's neurotic about anything.
Right.
Just about anything. When I called up and I told him my mother died, he knew very well. First thing he said, I'm sorry. Do I have to send flowers? I got to write down the address.
He's just like the show, isn't
yeah,
it?
It's exactly like the show.
Well, yeah, he like, you know, obviously it's about a character who's just insanely honest with everybody.
Very honest.
And what it proves to you, that show and that material is, and even Seinfeld to a certain level, if you're really honest, you're being mean. I mean, honesty is mean, you know?
It's true.
And it sounds mean. Now, what about Richard Lewis is a guy I've become friendly with.
Richard.
He's arguably the reason I wanted to get into stand-up comedy. But sometimes I feel bad to where his darkness goes beyond humor to almost like, I'm afraid he's suicidal or something. Like,
he went through...
Like, there's a fine... How much of a fine line between him or anybody else between, like, true depression and comedy, you know?
I think... with Richard, I know he went through what he had to go through, where he almost killed himself.
Well, 'cause I've been through the whole gamut, man. Yeah.
But so he's always on that edge of being very, very, neurotic.
Yes.
But people don't know this about him. He's actually one of the sweetest people on the planet.
He, when I went through my troubles, I met Richard on the Howard Stern show. He came on as a guest, and in my bio and in my book, actually, I had said that sketch comedy and comedic acting was, all Belushi, Jackie Gleason, and Bill Murray and stuff. But as far as stand-up was concerned, we were Richard Pryor and Kinison. But most of all, probably the most influential guy was Richard Lewis. I saw Richard Lewis' first Showtime special.
Oh, wow.
And it made me want to do stand-up. So he appreciated that. And when I went through my sort of hell, God, he called every week.
Yes.
He's like, "Are you okay?" And barely knew me. So yeah, it's a good camaraderie with comics. It's a competition, but...
Richard actually ends his emails, "Love Richard." I mean, he's just a sweet guy, and people they see that neurotic side, they don't see it. I was lucky enough to be, and it's in the book, I was actually lucky enough to be at the Improv in L.A. when Richard started to develop that character. And
the sort of I'm depressed.
And that week, when I saw the transition, and it literally was, he just got bent over more and more.
Even at like 33 years old, he had a hunchback, and he was just What I love about his acting, what also, I don't know, maybe you agree or disagree, but to me, stand-up, if you do it a lot on the road, the key is to make it seem like you're creating spontaneity on the spot, and he's good at that.
He's great at it.
Even if you like it's pre-written stuff. Now, did you do the road a lot? Did you get into that thing?
I did a road. I did a road somewhat, but I did a lot of the first road when it started up at the Washington D.C. and then Philadelphia.
You were literally at the very beginning of all this, yeah.
Jerry Stanley's gigs. I did the first Jerry Stanley gig, which was in Jersey.
Right.
And there was a big argument between Jerry Stanley and Glenn Hirsch because I was getting $25 more. Little did Hirsch know that I was getting $25 more because I was driving.
Yes, you would drive to gigs and stuff like that, but then it exploded.
It exploded, yeah.
And it's like by the time the mid-'80s to late 80s came and then Comedy Central comes around, stand-up's on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And then how did that affect your life? I mean,
well, I was writing by that time. I was writing on the Tonight Show,
right.
A few different shows. I would come back and do stand-up every now and then. So it didn't affect me so much.
Did you write for the Tonight Show with Carson?
Carson, yeah.
Now, what was that like, man?
It's in there, and I talk about it in the book. The first time I met Johnny, it's the scariest thing in the world because you go in his waiting room, and there's probably every picture he's ever had taken of him since his birth around on the wall, and it's so intimidating. And then you go in, he brings me in, and I got in through Jim McCauley because he had got him my material or whatever, and Johnny wanted me. And I'm sitting there. Our knees are like this far apart with Johnny Carson.
Right.
I couldn't even talk. I mean, I was like, what could you say?
How old are you at this point?
I was like, I guess in my 30s.
So this is in the mid-'70s?
No, this is in the 80s at some point.
Okay, so he's already like beyond legendary status.
Yeah, yes.
You're talking about the icon of icons.
And he was so nice and so complimentary, and I just didn't know what to say. Anything, I would have, if he would actually told me to go out that day and kill my parents, I would have done it. I mean,
Now, were you writing monologue jokes? Was that your main function?
What happened is I was writing sketches, because I asked him like an idiot, whatever you want. He said, what do you want to do, sketches or monologue? And I said, whatever you want. And he said, well, we need help in sketches.
Right.
And so I started doing that. And then at night I would write monologue stuff and give it to him. And then what was weird is I was finding out, and I'm a good joke writer, and none were getting on. And so the head writer was jealous because Johnny brought me in over him.
That happens all the time.
Was not giving him my material.
Wow.
Until Freddie DeCordova found out.
Imagine that competition-wise like that. He's not getting him. And DeCordova straightened it out for you.
DeCordova straightened out.
Well, stories like that I'm sure are in here, and that story alone makes me want to get the book. The book is called Stand Up Guys, A Generation of Laughs, a memoir by John DeBellis. And as a comic, obviously, I'm interested in that. But people love stand-up comedy, and it sounds like an amazing thing. And please go out and grab this. And John, thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you so much.
All right?
Yep.
Come by again, man.
I'd love to do that.
Hang
Thank
out,
you.
All right?
Thank you.
Stand Up Guys, A Generation of Laughs, John DeBellis. We'll be back with more of the Artie Lang Show right after this.
You are now
acting mayor of Coverton, and we are screwed.
Fitz's tips for being a good mayor. Tip 1, listen to the people.
What are you gonna do now?
Whatever the I want. Tip 2, clean up the police force.
It's not my birthday. Your jerk-off son's new uniform policy.
Ugh. Looking good, bud. Tip 3, have well-armed bodyguards.
No, you're asking for it, buddy.
Asking for what? Really, Josh?
Yep. Catch Call Me Fitz, Tuesday at 9 on Audience.
Really?
Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear.
She was the best thing that ever happened to you, and you blew it.